beautiful things appear when those who live there wish for them. When a gentle breeze passes through its jewel-laden trees, the music of its holy teachings fills the air and cleanses the minds of all who listen to it. In this pure land there are many fragrant lotus blossoms, and each blossom has many precious petals, and each petal shines with ineffable beauty. The radiance of these lotus blossoms brightens the path of wisdom, and those who listen to the music of the holy teaching are led into perfect peace. This is the relief offered by the Buddha.
Well, go to the way of purification, and then you will find in the part 3 of that chapter, I think it's chapter 6, the way of purification, the way of practice, way of purification, chapter 1 of the way of purification. Then there is the chapter 3 of that part, teaching in ancient fables, and it has got a lot of fables that are not too long.
Oh, these are good. These are very...
Yeah, and there are...
My friend Edmund Dakin would really appreciate this stuff. Edmund, can you read one of these fables? Can you find this text and read one of these fables in a British accent?
No, go ahead. Really Why don't you try to do it?
At one time, the tail and the head of a snake quarreled as to which should be the front. The tail said to the head, "You're always taking the lead. It is not fair. You ought to let me lead sometimes." The head answered, "It is the law of our nature that I should be the head. I cannot change places with you." But the quarrel went on, and one day the tail fastened itself to a tree and thus prevented the head from proceeding. When the head became tired with the struggle, the tail had its own way, with the result that snake fell into a pit of fire and perished. In the world of nature, there always exists an appropriate order, and everything has its own function. If this order is disturbed, the functioning is interrupted, and the whole order will go to ruin.
A foolish man was once boiling hot. I can't do it. I can't do a good one. You know, there's many different British accents.
No, why do you need to do a British accent? You don't need to, dude. Like, you're just sounding silly right now.
A foolish man was once boiling honey. His friend suddenly appeared, and the foolish man wanted to offer him some honey, but it was too hot. And so, without removing it from the fire, he fanned it to make it cool. In like manner, it is impossible to get honey out of cool wisdom without first removing it from the fire of worldly passion. I don't know if that's my favorite one, but that's a short one.
Yeah. Once there was a wealthy but foolish man. When he saw the beautiful 3-storied house of another man, he envied it and made up his mind to have one built just like it, thinking he was himself just as wealthy. He called the carpenter and ordered him to build it. The carpenter consented and immediately began to construct the foundation. The first story, the second story, and then the third story. The wealthy man noticed this with irritation and said, "I don't want a foundation or a first story or a second story. I just want the beautiful third story. Build it quickly." A foolish man always thinks only of the results, and it is impatient without the effort that it is necessary to get good results. No good can be attained without proper effort, just as there can be no third story without the foundation and the first and the second stories.
has anything good to say about this person. But the amazing thing is 65% of veterans voted for him. I don't get it. Because like you said, it's not a right or left thing, it's a right or a wrong thing.
So if you're a nurse or a medical professional,
okay, that's been Isa Poetry and Prose. Zach and Isa read a little something for us. We want to thank them for their time, providing us with some intelligent information instead of the typical conversations about nothing and wasting our fucking time.
You have to base it, no, but I'm talking about if they're out at your front door. And
America
Well,
did a
there's
pretty
no
great
law.
job.
No, if there's wait, I mean, do you think that law and order is authoritarian? Like, is that?
I would say fascism is basically
If it's applied fairly and equally, and
the only time I approve of
Yes.
fascism is during wartime. It's like when we end up kicking up our National Defense Act. I mean that's when the economically we start. It's basically fascism at that point, where it's a state steered. What the fuck do you call it? It's a state steered capitalism. It's like a corporatist government, but then you end up having they end up cracking down on freedom of speech. They're looking for there's certain information they don't want disseminated.
this is yet another topic. We're talking about World War II. And by the way, the alliance, again, no offense to Diego and Princessa, but the alliance between a Hitler supporter like Diego and a Palestinian supporter like Nora comes as no surprise. Because fascism and Jew haters
Well, look, the best place is to start. I think Gems from the Equinox, edited by Ricardo, has got all the magical writing.
originates of the Palestinian movement, a big Hitler supporter who wants to bring the genocide to the Levant. Thank God.
Normal. Would you admit that Germany had the right to defend herself?
Everybody has the right to defend themselves. What they don't have the right to do is to conquer the world. That's it. Try. I like Japan.
No, but that's
Japan committed genocide. Well, all of Portuguese are all the way in front of them.
I'm not
We're doing this
saying
genocide.
genocide because that's a very loaded term and you're not looking for the same.
It's not a loaded term. We invented the term. We could.
What's the argument? Israel is attacking everyone.
We're not attacking everyone.
Every time I come on this floor,
Randy, you have to
strong
always
language.
stay
He
supportive.
can use strong language.
I'm
You
saying-
choose to admonish me.
I'm saying-
I don't work for you, sir.
One
I
good
work for
argument.
you. But this guy speaks over.
You got more than 1.4
You can't
million.
hear the chairman. You gotta text your phone.
You got more than 1.4 million illegal aliens unmedicated.
How Speaker
He's not
Johnson
talking to you,
made this
Rabbi.
false
No, not
claim
you,
while
Rabbi.
assessing the impact of a one big
Oh,
beautiful
no,
bill.
Already.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
What I am saying is that Germany has the right to defend herself.
Not to kill the Jews. And
I understand. Okay, but one could argue that Israel is doing the same.
the same as what?
Because they're attacking everyone in their surroundings, for example. Because they're not
Oh, wait a second.
I'm just saying, one could argue that Israel is doing the same thing Germany is doing, but they're just not that terrorist. That's all it is.
Germany.
Are you a corporate employee or
I'm
a
not
I'm not even saying it's a bad thing.
France wasn't trying to attack Germany. England wasn't trying to attack Germany. Czechoslovakia or Poland, none of them were trying to.
They're the ones who started the war.
I'm sorry.
They're the ones who started the war.
Who started the war?
The English started the war by getting Hitler to attack Poland. Well, why did Hitler attack Poland?
Today didn't feel like home.
I say this with serious respect. Looking for good.
I mean, that was German land. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Los Angeles today didn't feel like home.
Actually, there's a treaty
That's what
between
they
them.
keep
I see the city hard.
Well,
Now
I'm
you're making stuff up out of your head.
Families back.
I mean, before you talk out of your head, why don't you
What are you
look
doing?
and ask them what they
If
think?
I say it, then it's the
You know?
truth. If I say it, then it's the truth. And if it's not, it's the
What are
truth.
you doing?
You're not God.
Here I am with my client
That's
Carrie.
right.
Today I not that successful at it, and like that. So you don't want to use words like genocide. You don't want to use
Genocide, yes. The Palestinian cause is genocidal, 100%, as is the
Man, fuck the Palestinian, fuck every Palestinian child. I'm not even saying.
Oh, I don't like that. That's not nice.
I'm just saying that you guys are like almost like Hitler. Well, there's nothing wrong with
We're
that.
not almost like Hitler. That's sick.
I don't mind Hitler.
We're not suicidal, and we don't want to take over the world. All we want to do is live.
You're assuming that he is suicidal.
Who, Hitler? He killed himself, for God's sake.
Look, I'm
Allegedly.
I don't believe that. I think
You
he was
believe it, except they found him in his bunker with his wife. All of his aid took poison. All of his aid took poison.
What is the DNA?
They all committed genocide. They all committed genocide together.
You should look into that more. I assure you they did not find them.
They didn't find them. They didn't find them. They didn't poison their own children into suicide.
That is the story.
What do you mean that's the story?
It's a narrative.
I don't think Hitler suicided. I think Hitler was
Go look up how they were found, for God's sake.
That's right. Who signed them?
I beg your pardon?
Who signed them?
Did I find them?
Tim, normal saying that Germany declared war on Britain. The other way around.
Amazing.
I said that they attacked Britain. I didn't say they declared war on Britain.
Really?
They bombed Britain.
Okay, so they bombed Britain. Who bombed who first?
What difference does it make?
Well, what difference does it make?
There's also a very good edition called Magic, spelled with a K, and that's got his instructions on yoga as well. I think those are the two most important things, that and those in the Book of the Law. For those of you who are interested in tarot, I'm personally convinced that the best book on tarot that's ever been written is Crowley's The Book of Thoth. Right. I'm quite happy to mention the OTO. What would you like to know about the OTO? Well, I'm a member of the Caliphate OTO. There are a number of organisations claiming to be the OTO. But myself, I've looked at it. As far as I can see, Caliphate's probably got the best claim. And I'm happy to be a member of it. I'm quite happy to talk about the OTO. I don't see any big secret about it. Yes, very much. Nice question so far. I've no idea. One thing I would say is I've got absolutely no idea what the OTO lodges are like out here. I'd very much like to meet some OTO people out here. Albion Oasis. Albion Oasis, England. Yes. About 3 years. No, I mean, if you are, if we're going to get into the history of that, the OTO goes back to the turn of the century when it was founded by Karl Kellner, wealthy German ironmaster. It then went into the hands of Theodor Reuss, who worked for the Prussian Secret Service and also sang in vaudeville. And in 1912, as a result of a meeting between Reuss and Crowley, Reuss became, if you like, converted to the Book of the Law, and the OTO accepted the Book of the Law, and Crowley became the head of the English-speaking sections. In 1921, Reuss became ill and nominated Crowley as his successor, and in, I think, 1925, the OTO elected Crowley as world head. Crowley died in 1947 and nominated Karl Germer as his successor. Germer died sometime later and left the matter unclear. As a result of which, a number of organisations claim to be the OTO. The claim of the Caliphate OTO rests upon Major Grady McMurtry, who received letters from Crowley and who proceeded to get the OTO going. I rather looked at it as emergency powers. The OTO looked like withering and dying, and he got it going again with the help of a lot of people who'd been members of the OTO out here in October called Crane's Apprentice, which is about Israel Regardie. I wrote a deliberately boring footnote. It's terrible. But it's a joke on the reader, I'm afraid, but I might as well give you an advance warning. It blathers on in minute detail about the issue of certain Golden Dawn charters. Just as the reader is about to play Russian roulette instead, I wrote the final sentence, which is really my view on the matter. But isn't the issue of charters, on the whole, an extremely boring one? If a group is doing good magical work, it doesn't need a charter. And if it isn't doing good magical work, then even a charter won't save it. Yes, sir.
You mentioned hybrid monster of the British press turning on Crowley. Has the hybrid monster turned on you?
Yes, you're very well informed. Yes, oddly enough, this is precisely what has happened. I decided to take a job, and I was housemaster and senior history master at this college, which is basically for teenage children of millionaires. Spoiled brats have been slung out of schools elsewhere, sex, drugs, rock and roll, a pretty wild bunch. But as it happened, I grew rather fond of them, and I did rather like my job. And all was going swimmingly until a paper called the News of the World decided to have a go at me. Now, I don't know if you know anything about Britain's News of the World, but it makes your National Enquirer look like the New York Times. In this paper, I was surprised to read, basically, there's the worst photograph of me that's ever been taken. A headline, Devil Teacher, Master at Top School as Black Magic Weirdo. My book, The Legacy of the Beast, and Crowley Regardie, The Law is for All, on top right-hand corner. Books of Evil, Bibles of a sick occult sect. I am apparently a devil worshipper, and you better be careful, because according to the article, I regularly gorge myself on human blood to get charged up. I regularly attend meetings of something called the Order of the Eastern Templars, which regularly indulges in animal sacrifices and kinky group sex sessions. Now, if there's anybody here who knows of any kinky group sex sessions, I've never been to one, and I'd love to go, and that sounds like a good fun. Now, what else do I do? At least I'm sick, and my beliefs are sordid, and all my friends are sinister, and what a sinister bunch I see around me here. In fact, they went to the principal of the college and demanded that I be fired or they'd expose him. Not that he was an occultist, he was just a rather dodgy character. Creaming it in off these rather likeable brats at $150,000 a year net profit, and never turning up for his own lessons. But that's by the by. What else have I done to offend the news of the world? Well, there's one remarkable thing. I can't even say when they interviewed me I was misquoted. It was flagrant lies from start to finish. There's one moment in the interview these two guys are really, they look like thugs. I mean, if you shot their hand, you know, you sort of wanted to go and wash it with Dettol or something. And they said, have you ever taken drugs? And I replied, a long time ago, when I was at Cambridge University, I tried marijuana. And they said, funny how they all say that. And yes, isn't it? You've got quite a sense of humour, haven't you, Mr. Sister? Well, I like to think so, gentlemen. And it was printed as, I advocate the use of drugs. I take marijuana and speed. I may have tried hard drugs. I can't remember. Well, I think if I'd taken hard drugs, you know, somehow I'd remember the fact. This was followed up, I got fired, it was followed up by another article, Devil Teacher Gets the Boot, which also revealed that the use of blood is common at OTO meetings. I'm kind of reminded of the story of a vampire that comes in to attack the young girl, and she sees a vampire coming in, and the crucifix is above her bed, and she grabs it and holds it up, and the vampire says, "Lady, it's not your lucky day." But actually, what I think is going to happen on this case is I've hit the news of the world with a red, and libel in England is penalised very, very heavily if you can prove your case. And the article is so preposterous that my lawyers are rubbing their hands with joy, and every time they see me, they sort of go ding on the cash register. And I may well end up writing to the journalist in question, "Dear Mr. Blythe, thank you so much for your incredible kindness in allowing me to retire for the rest of my life in considerable comfort." Any further questions? Yes.
I have one more, just a point of curiosity. Alistair Crowley had several children. As far as I know, there's one still living. And the last I heard,
Yeah.
he was missing in the FBI. I was just wondering if you had information.
Well, we've got to be very careful about Aleister Crowley's children. It's all like Aleister Crowley reincarnations. One of my minor ambitions is one day to give a party and to invite everybody who claims to be Aleister Crowley's reincarnation. I think it'd be utterly wonderful. I'm Aleister Crowley. No, you're not. I am. So block the doors and let him fight it out. As for his children, by Rose, he had his first child who died of acute pneumonia, and his second was Lola Zaza. Lola Zaza refused to see him after Rose left him to marry the eminent masochist Lieutenant Colonel Galway. And Lola Zaza lived on, I believe, until the 1960s, not wanting anything to do with Crowley whatsoever. When he had a court case in the 1930s, there was this absolutely wonderful woman who, after he lost it, came up to him and said, "That verdict is the wickedest thing since the crucifixion. And can't I do something for you?" And he looked at her and he was too overcome to speak. And then she said, "Couldn't I be the mother of your child?" And that caused him to cry for the first time in years. But once he dried his tears, I bet you, dragged her off to surviving him. And, well, anyway, a baby was born. Now, I could be wrong, and I'd appreciate any extra information on this. I was under the impression that this was Alistair Ataturk, to whom Crowley wrote some very fine letters. And Alistair Ataturk, I think, died at some point in the late 1960s. I'm not aware of any other children. It was rumoured that Graham Bond of Graham Bond Magic was a rock band of the 60s, was an illegitimate child of Crowley. And has anybody here heard of Graham Bond at all? He was meant to got into a fight with a Satanist, and as a result he lost, and he flung himself onto a tube train. But it was never ascertained as to whether he was one of Crowley's illegitimate sons or not. So that's the information I've got on the matter. I'm sure if you really wanted to hunt it down, OTO Archives could probably help you.
In your book, you said that the AA is currently in a period of silence.
A period of silence.
Well, I know that at least three groups are going to be the real AA. One of them has retired from the war. I was wondering if you know anything about these, if there's any claims that have real AA.
At the present time, any group openly shouting we're the AA is not.
What is the EU?
What is the EU? Oh, the AA. Right. You can look at it in two ways. Right. You can look at it. Good question. You can look at the AA in two ways. The way in which I like to look at it most is that it is a brotherhood and sisterhood of men and women totally pledged to the advancement of individual human consciousness and general human evolution, who put out systems and techniques for human beings to use in order for that function to be accomplished. That's it in its widest sense. In a more narrow sense, it refers to the system established by Aleister Crowley. He worked out a system whereby anybody could go from the very depths to the very heights of a system by which man could become God. And full details of this system in Crowley's writings, most notably Jones from the Equinox and Magic and Theory and Practice. Because the AA has such a very high reputation, inevitably charlatans will endeavour to appropriate its name in order to calm the gullible. Well, yes, we all are God. It's just that we don't realise it. And because we've been so screwed up by this utterly lunatic society in which we have the misfortune to live, complex techniques are required if we are to realise ourselves as the gods we are. And I really would like to reiterate that we won't realise ourselves as the gods we are unless we first realise ourselves as animals. No, surely. Yes, I think there is. An animal is an elemental. Animals are simple creatures. We are much more complex. The reason that the Egyptians portrayed their gods very often with the heads of animals was they were trying to make exactly that point, that we are the bridge between animal and God, but we have got an extra dimension of consciousness which the other animals do not have. Good question. I don't think we know for certain. It's just something that's always been said by every great religious teacher or mystic, and it seems a reasonable working assumption. But that should make what we're doing is we're cutting ourselves off from the animals instead of realizing the animal that we are within ourselves. We should be proud of it. Do you want to be what? Okay.
You mentioned, this necessity for individuals to realize their higher potential.
Yeah.
In order for survival to take place in the species.
Yes.
And I totally agree with you. Now, is it in order your parents to make efforts to make more education or knowledge or training or whatever
I honestly can't speak for the OTO in the United States. It would be best to speak with its representatives. So in England, yes. The OTO is just one order of a number of orders committed to this ideal.
So how do they, I understand these to be very secretive kind of orders, how are they?
Well, I mean, it's not that secretive. I mean, anybody who can get hold of a copy of Francis King's Secret Rituals of the OTO has got a copy of their initiatory ceremonies. And I'm sure that, well, in England anyway, the OTO normally puts a box number in various occult publications. I presume they do the similar sort of thing over here.
So I was wondering if they have some kind of purpose to attempt to...
Well, the purpose is nothing less than the transformation of the planet.
Sure. So, how are they going to help that?
Good question. The ideal is simply to get more and more people to develop themselves to their fullest limits, and by their actions in society, those people will affect all those with whom they come into contact, and every day a minor change in consciousness may be brought about. That is the idea.
So, how are people, implementing this practically? Kind of putting it really, making meetings more public or...
Well, it's not a public society, it's a private society. Yeah.
Making more books.
Yeah, the OTO, I understand, has embarked on a very full publishing program. Yeah, to make more and more writings available to the public. And so the thing to do would be to examine the catalogues of places like the Mandala bookstore here, or the Bodhi Tree, and quite a number of OTO publications.
So I fully agree with you. Literacy, techniques for realization of human potential.
OTO is one way of doing it. There are other ways of doing it. You must take the path that suits you.
Because you said you were going to say something about how Crowley had a unique understanding of now.
Yes.
To the Taoist practice.
Yes. Well, what Crowley saw is that essentially there are three basic axioms on life, on existence. I'm going to start with one of those three. Either existence is suffering, or existence is joy, or existence is existence. We call these the black school, the white school, and the yellow school, and they've all got their valid techniques of magic and mysticism. Classic example of the black school, in fact probably the best example, would be Buddhism. Existence is suffering, the cause of suffering is craving, etc. Classic example of the white school would be Philema, or certain of the Sufi sects, or the Tantric sects, operating from the premise that existence is joy. Taoism is the school of existence is existence. It's the art of doing everything by doing nothing. Have you read the Tao Te Ching?
Yeah. I have some understanding of some of the terms of yogas.
Right. Well,
The
Taoism is philosophy and Taoism is technique.
That's Taoism is all inclusive. Like now it's ingenious. They might call that too much.
Yeah, but I mean, Charles Luke's book, Taoist Yoga, for instance, could be described as a manual of, an interesting manual on Tantra, rather than, it's a set of techniques, rather than the Tao Te Ching, which is the heart of the matter.
Yeah. There's I don't know, it's all the spirit. All these, like, practices that we do. It seems to relate to what you're trying to describe.
Well, there's, in the Legacy of the Beast, there is a chapter totally devoted to Taoism and Crowley's contribution to it. Yes. There's still quite a number of unpublished writings, as far as I'm aware, many of which are in the possession of the Caliphate OTO. For example, there's no beautiful account of Paris working that's not been published, or the Amalantara working that's not been published. I'm sincerely hoping that with the new publishing program, he also wrote an essay on mescaline, which I've never read, which I'd like to read. There are efforts made to get out all of his writings, and I think that is part of the OTO publishing program. But there is still quite a mass of stuff that is unpublished, and this includes volume after volume of his own magical diaries.
How would you compare the system of the system with
Okay. One way of looking at it is to say Golden Dawn starts you out in the shallow end, and OTO chucks you in at the deep end. That's one way of looking at it. OTO tends to be more drastic in its effect upon people. OTO is totally committed to the Book of the Law. The Golden Dawn is not. You could see the Golden Dawn as part of the AA, in that the AA is concerned with individual initiation, and Golden Dawn is part of that. The OTO is not only concerned with individual initiation, it is also concerned with collective action. In terms of the magic word, Golden Dawn is ceremonial, OTO is sexual. In the low degrees of the OTO, there's a great deal of ceremonial, which derives, in fact, from the Golden Dawn, with one or two innovations. But the essence of the OTO is, in fact, sexual magic. And what is sexual magic? Well, sex magicians are people who believe that the act of sex is the holiest act